Hi, everyone. This is Caron Whitaker, and I'm here with Riley Teitelbaum, and to walk through the state coordinator training for the 2024 National Bike Summit. This training is designed for those who wish to learn more about leading lobby visits with members of Congress and to act as state coordinators at the National Bike Summit. Oops, sorry. So today we're going to go over the roles of a state coordinator. We'll go through the steps and resources for setting up lobby meetings, and we'll talk through how to lead a lobby meeting with a member of Congress. Something different this year is that the lobby days meetings will all be in person on the Hill. I think there's something about meeting in person that just helps build those relationships with those members of Congress. But before we get going, I want to start by saying thank you. State coordinators have always been a key part of the National Bike Summit, and I really appreciate your willingness to volunteer and to take some time away from your jobs to do this training and be a leader of your delegation. I hope you find this training valuable, and let us know if you have any feedback. The state coordinator role is really what makes our lobby day different from other lobby days. And because we know that we can't change federal policy from Washington alone, we know that regular contact from constituents is the most effective way to move politicians on issues, and that the bicycling community has been successful over the years, not because of, we have a lot of money or we have these high-powered lobbyists, but it's because bicyclists show up and engage. And the summit is where we sort of kick off that every year. So we look at the role of a state coordinator. We ask you to do a couple of things: to set up the Hill meetings, and then to moderate those meetings with your senator and representatives, and to prepare your delegate for success. To prepare your delegation for success, we ask you to do two things. One is a prep meeting before the summit, just so you can all get to know each other. And then on the first night of the summit, before the Hill Day, we'll have state meetings. It's a chance for you to meet with everyone that's at the summit from your state and to plan and prepare for your meetings. Our overall goal at the National Bike Summit and these lobby days is really to build relationships with congressional offices, both the staff and the elected official. We want them to come out of the meeting understanding what bicycling means in their community, and that there is a voice of advocates, a voice of citizens that really care about it. And with that they know who to contact in their district whenever something about bicycling comes up. We also, of course, want them to know what our asks are, our legislative asks will be this year, and to know who to contact if they have questions on that. But that long-term relationship is how we really get things done. So when we look at the summit timeline this year, right now, we've already gone through the early bird. We're now in what we call our January special for registration. And once we finish that, in early February, we'll send you the list of everyone who signed up to this point, as well as resources to help you send those meetings. We really suggest you start sending those meetings in February. So we give you some chance to set the meetings, and then we ask you to set up that prep meeting with the people from your states coming to the summit before the summit. And then at the summit, we'll have the chance for the state meeting on March 19th. March 20th is Hill Day. And then after that, we really hope you follow up, because a lot of the benefit really comes from that part. So now we're going to turn to scheduling meetings, and I'm going to send you over to Riley. Riley?
Thanks, Karen. Yeah, so we're going to go a little bit into the nuts and bolts of how to actually schedule the meetings. If you could go to the next slide, Karen. Great, thank you. So you will receive a state sheet for lobby day, and there will be a couple tabs on that state sheet. There'll be the participants tab, which will list your summit attendees who've signed up to lobby their congressional district, and contact information. And then there's the meeting tab. This is last year we had both a meeting tab and a staff tab. We've combined those two tabs of your lobby day sheet into a single tab to kind of streamline the process for you. So the meetings tab will list your congressional delegation. There'll be a place for you to input details and progress on setting up the congressional meetings and contact info for schedulers and transportation staffers. Karen, could you jump to the next slide? So what we see here is the meetings tab. So column A calculates whether or not you have participants attending from a particular district. So you know if you need to request a meeting. It will automatically say yes for your 2 senators, and then it'll say yes for any district you have a participant attending from. You want to be sure to keep column B, which is your meeting status, up to date as meetings are requested and confirmed. You want to make sure that the info on your meetings tab, that you keep the formatting consistent, because that info feeds into a master sheet so that Karen and I can see how things are progressing. We know if you need support or anything. But so when you get your state sheet, if you could change the status, the meeting status to NA, if you don't have any participants from a district and you aren't planning on requesting a meeting. Some state coordinators who represent statewide organizations may request additional meetings with because they represent the entire state's interests. But we are specifically asking that you request meetings for every district that you have a participant from. So if you don't have any participants, mark it NA so you know that you don't need to request that meeting. Karen, could you continue to the next slide? And then when it comes to actually requesting the meeting, the contact information, you'll want to scroll all the way to the right of the meeting tab. Starting in column T, that's where you're going to find contact information for each office's transportation staffer and their scheduler. Those are the 2 people you're going to kick off those meeting requests with. So by default, column H on the spreadsheet, which is the location, will list the congressperson's office. A lot of times that is where the meeting takes place, so we just wanted to streamline that for you. However, sometimes meetings take place elsewhere in a different room, generally in the same building, but you want to be sure that you update that cell if you find out that the meeting is happening elsewhere. As you're requesting the meetings, you want to be sure to fill out your team lead, scheduled by, last updated, and notes columns to keep track of your outreach, and as well as if you or someone else in your delegation will be leading a particular meeting. Next slide. Great. So that's kind of all the info that you'll need to request the meetings. We also provide you with an email template so that you are just to make the process super easy. You can personalize some sections of it, but by and large, we try to just make the requesting of meetings as easy as possible. So we will provide you with email templates so you can request those meetings. So you'll know once we send the state list to you which districts you have constituents from. As time goes on, registration will continue to be open on generally like a weekly basis is what I aim for. I send out email updates when new people from your state sign up for the summit. That message will also indicate whether or not the new people represent new districts from your delegation. New people, when I add them to your participants tab, will be highlighted. You can remove that highlighting once you've made note of the new addition. It's just to make sure that you are aware that new people have been added. That formula on the meetings tab will update and will say yes when you if you do have people from new districts, but I'll also communicate that in email so you know if there's a new meeting that you previously didn't have anyone from attending, so you hadn't requested, but now we're gonna ask that you request that meeting if turns out you do have participants from that district. Um, Great. And then just a few tips when it comes to requesting meetings. It helps to divide your day into House and Senate. So you could do morning, schedule your Senate meetings, and afternoon for your House. Obviously, you may need to be a little nimble about that. People may have scheduling constraints, but just using that as a general guideline for how you're scheduling can help you minimize the potential for conflicts to ensure that everyone from your delegation is able to attend those Senate meetings that are relevant to everyone in the delegation. When you send your emails to House staffers, be sure to put the representative's name in the email. That is for your benefit. It's going to be much easier to keep track of your emails and who's responding and things like that when the subject line has the name of the representative. So definitely advise you to do that. And then if you don't get a response, give an office a week, then try again and just kind of keep up that pattern until you get a meeting. If you've sent three emails or so and you still haven't gotten any sort of response, maybe let Caron and I know. We may be able to assist you in some other way. But generally, it's just those follow-ups and making people aware that there are people who are going to be in DC from their state looking to talk to the offices of their representatives, that will hopefully move the dial for them and get those meetings set. Caron, I believe I'm passing it back to you from here.
Hey, thanks, Riley. So yeah, so the biggest responsibility is setting up those meetings. But there's two other things that we ask for your help with. One is three other things actually: the prep meeting, the meeting at the summit, and then the actual meetings. So the prep meeting is something that should take place before the summit. If you don't have a Zoom, let us know and we can help you set something up. But the basic idea is to give people a chance to meet each other, to talk through what to expect at those Hill meetings, and to assign roles, to give everyone a role that they can play. And so you know, we're talking about those roles. We'll talk about those roles here with you, but we'll also do a webinar for attendees, both a 101 how to lobby, and then we'll do one on the asks as well. So you should have all that information ahead of time. They should have all that information ahead of time. So, you know, just some basics. You want to make sure everyone has a chance to introduce themselves. If you have a big group, maybe you do it in the chat or you do something else. But just to sort of get on the same page. One of the things that we talk about a lot is one of the overall expectations really is emphasizing respect. You know, we don't always see, when we think about politics on the news or in public, respect isn't always leading in those discussions, but in Hill offices, it's different. You're meeting with staffers, they're policy experts, and so this is a time for us to be respectful of everyone, whether you agree with your member of Congress, whether you agree with the arguments that the staffer is giving, and even with each other. So we want to make sure that we're always in that respect, showing that respect. Respect can mean asking someone who maybe hasn't had a speaking role before to really encourage them to be part of the meeting. It could be asking someone who has a lot to say and maybe has done this before and wants to just talk the whole time, asking them to step back on that. A respect means also sort of sticking to the asks of the summit and the asks that you as a group have talked about. We don't want any surprises. We don't want someone in the meeting prepared to talk about our asks and then someone else in the meeting starts talking about something else that maybe the first person does or doesn't agree with. So it's sticking to the ask, giving everyone a chance to speak and participate, and also really listening to each other and listening to that staff or the member of Congress, figuring out where they're coming from. The other thing we suggest is assigning roles for the meeting. This helps when you get to the meeting for it to run smoothly, to make sure you cover everything. And also, again, so that everybody has a role. I'll talk through each of these later on when we get to the meeting, but do note that there are some things like the note taker or the researcher, if there's somebody who absolutely doesn't want to talk, that there's something they can do to be part of the meeting as well. So then we'll talk about the state meetings. Once we get to that summit, we'll have already done the webinar on how to lobby. We'll have done a webinar on the asks. You'll have had your prep meeting. And then when we get at the summit again, we'll go through those asks one more time with everyone. And then we'll give you a chance for you as a group from your state to sit down and talk through those meetings and do that final preparation. This is, excuse me, this is a great chance to answer any questions, make sure everybody knows what their roles are. There'll be league staff that are there to help you with any questions about the ask or how you're planning your meeting. So just get everyone on one page. One thing we suggest is setting up a group text or a chat so that you know if someone's running late to a meeting, if someone has a question that day, if you get to a meeting and you're like, hey, where is everybody? So that you have that opportunity to have the conversation. All right, when we actually get to the Hill meetings, oops, I've got my slides reversed. So this we just talked about, the state meeting, preparing for that. So when we get to those in-person meetings, a couple of things you want to make sure. You should plan to be there a few minutes early, meet outside the meeting room, right? So you can make sure that you all get there together and you can walk in together and you can check in with the receptionist. Most of the time the meetings will take place in that office. Sometimes if you have a particularly big group or it's a particularly busy day, they might take you to another room. They might say, let's go down to the cafeteria. They might say, actually, can we just stand here and speak in the hallway? They're not trying to be disrespectful. It's a lot of these offices, particularly on the House side, are pretty small, and they're just trying to find a place to accommodate you. So the meeting flow, like we talked about, it's good for everyone to get there early, make sure everybody's set. You know, I've been a lobbyist for 20 years. If I'm going to a meeting with someone else, I still do that. We still sort of meet ahead of time, make sure we know who's going to say what, that we're prepared, and then we go in. So get there early, introduce yourself, ask everyone to do a quick introduction. I always say your name and where you're from, and then maybe if you have a role in an organization. So we want to keep that quick because these meetings are generally 30 minutes in total. We want to find something to say thank you to the office for, particularly around bicycling. We'll help you with that. We'll send out some cheat sheets about whether the member has supported one of our asks. If you look at the cheat sheet and there's nothing there, try to think about something you've seen, even a statement that you feel like you can say thank you for, and just make sure everyone in your group knows that ahead of time. Then you want to talk about just the benefits of bicycling, any local success stories you've had, why it's important to you, something that grounds it in the district. Then there'll be a chance to talk about the asks. So you want to introduce the bill that we're talking about, maybe answer some questions about it, talk about why it would benefit your district, and then make sure to say, will you co-sponsor? Or will you ask the member to co-sponsor this bill? At the very end of the meeting, you want to do a closing and a wrap up. You know, as we talked about at this meeting, we really think that the safety of people biking and walking is really important, and we think that the Lincoln Camp Safety Bill will help us meet those goals. say thank you, and then after the meeting, after you've gotten back to the lobby headquarters or you're away from the office, do a quick debrief. So one thing we ask is that each meeting have a moderator and a timekeeper. That could be you. If you have a bunch of meetings, you may assign somebody else in those meetings to do that. And the job of the moderator and the timekeeper is really to keep things running smoothly. One thing I do if it's a big group is at the very beginning sort of ask, like, I have this meeting scheduled for 30 minutes. Is that what you have as well? So that gives them a chance to say, well, actually I have to leave in 10 minutes, and then you might have to reorganize your meeting. Or for almost all the time, they'll say, yes, I have 30 minutes. And that's a reminder to everyone in the room, that's the amount of time we have. One of the things I think can happen with the meeting is somebody just starts talking, and maybe they're nervous, maybe they have a great story, and they just keep talking. And so if you're getting nervous about time, we want to give you some prep on how to transition to the next person. And I also think it's really helpful in that state meeting or even the prep meeting to say, look, I might have to transition us to the next thing. So just be prepared. If I say to you, like, thanks, Caron, for sharing your experience with safer infrastructure, that's improving your commute. I'd like to now ask Riley to introduce our legislative ask. So let them know to listen for those transitions and be ready to move on to the next person. Another one, thanks, Riley, for introducing that legislation. Representative, do you have any questions regarding that legislation? Sometimes it's not us, it's not the advocates who start talking and don't stop. Sometimes it's whether conscious or not, it can be a way that a staff or a member of Congress uses up the time so they don't have to hear the ask, so they don't have to respond. So one thing you may find yourself having to do is very politely saying something like, hey, that's great that you've been biking in the district. We'd love to join you sometime, but right now I want to make sure we have time to ask you about some legislation. Cecily? Or, thank you, Congressman. I think Cecily would like to ask you about some legislation we're supporting. I always suggest thinking about what you're going to say a little bit ahead of time, and then being so that you're more prepared to do that. Sometimes a member of Congress or a staffer or somebody in the group will go on a different issue, and we want to bring it back to what we're here for, what our Bike Summit asks are. This is another example of something you could say, like, we hear your concern regarding a public option on healthcare, and as bicycle advocates, we don't take a position on health policy. We do take a position on the positive health outcomes that can come from increasing infrastructure for active transportation. Anything that sort of gets us back to the topic. Sometimes you'll hit a dead end, or you'll get a staffer that's not giving you anything. They're not really responding. And then you want to ask some questions that are not yes, no. And some of those questions you could do are things like, so who else in the community would you be interested in hearing from on this issue? Or is there any data or information that would help you get to a decision on this issue? So you also want to keep calm. Again, sometimes people are really passionate. Maybe someone in our group gets emotional or a little bit testy about something. It rarely happens. Maybe you hear from the other side. Then it's your job to sort of say, Congresswoman, obviously we're very passionate people, and we believe our issue is a matter of life and death. You were saying that bicycling infrastructure isn't a priority in our district. Can we share a couple of examples on why we think it's a priority? So just bringing everyone back to the moment and redirecting it to something productive. Again, this almost never happens. A couple other scenarios. Maybe you asked a question and they're not answering right away. That's okay. Give them 20, 30 seconds to answer. Don't just jump in there. You might actually they may be thinking you might be you might get a really thoughtful answer if you give them a little bit of time to formulate their thoughts. If they ask you a question that you don't know the answer to, say, listen, I'm sorry, I don't have the answer to that off the top of my head. Can I get back to you in a week? That's actually, they don't expect you to have all the answers, and it's a great opportunity to continue that discussion and that relationship into the week. But don't ever make something up. It's fine that you don't answer. They don't actually expect you to have all the answers, but they want your help finding the answer. And again, like if there's folks in your delegation, if you go to a couple of meetings and there's someone who hasn't spoken yet, check in with them. Say, you know, hey, we have this other meeting. I would love for you to play this role. Would you be willing to do that? I think the most interesting part of that meeting is when you can get into a discussion, when you have some back and forth with the staff or the elected official. And then I think then when you get there, I would think about these meetings not just as an opportunity to give our position, but sort of a fact-finding mission to figure out where your elected official is. There's 535 members of Congress, actually 540, and I don't get to visit all those offices all the time. So it's super helpful for me when you go into one of those offices and come back with some information on where that member is. Again, we want to have a give and take, really listen carefully. But sometimes I think it's helpful ahead of time to have some of those discussion questions. Here's a couple of examples. You know, something very basic about what questions you have regarding this bill. Or given our description of this legislation, what sounds most relevant in our district? Be very specific and say, does this sound like something the senator would be interested in supporting? And that's a really great question, because then they're going to have to say, well, I think he or she or they may need to know more about this. That's a question that could give us some clues on where to go next. Another thing is just to ask, what do you see as the transportation priorities in our district? And how does biking and walking fit into that? We also talked about the role of a note taker. That can be really important, because that's going to help us know how to follow up with that office in the future. A couple things, we'll give you a feedback form that will ask all these questions. You can have a hard copy that you bring into the meeting. You could have it up on your phone through the meeting, but these are some of the notes. We want to know who from that staff was present, the member of Congress was present, who on our side was there, who were you in the meeting with? We want to know what the legislators' concerns or comments or questions about the bill was. We also ask, what percent of the time were you talking versus what percent of the time was the staff or people from the office talking? That also is a gauge of interest. You want to think about these meetings almost like an interview. The best meetings are 50-50. What specific questions did they have? How did you answer them? Were there any questions you couldn't answer that you would like our help with? If they said anything supportive. And then what you see is follow-up tasks. And this is where you can write the questions like, he asked this, we didn't have an answer for this one. They were wondering what the percentages were in our community. And then you can send that to us. We'll help you answer those questions so you can go back to them. After the meeting, I think it's always really important to do a team debrief. We do suggest sort of getting out of the office and away from the office so that you have some privacy with this, but, you know, say thank you to your team, congratulate them. If anyone, you know, did a really great job relating a bill or bringing up an issue, call out those successes, ask for their feedback. I think it's always interesting to have the note taker share their summary and see if everybody heard the same thing, right? Identify any unanswered questions. Assign someone to write a thank you note to the people you met with, and then assign someone to do the lobby report back to us at the League. And then finally, I just want to talk through the follow-up, because this can be a super important part of the meeting. We just talked about sending a thank you note. in that note, you want to reiterate, like, will the member of Congress co-sponsor these bills? Confirm that you'll follow up with information. You know, at the meeting, you asked us these questions. We'll get you that information within the week, or we'll get you that information as soon as we can. And then if there was something that you thought about after the meeting or came out in the debrief, this is a chance for you to add in that question. And you can CC everyone who is in the meeting, but make sure that one person is responsive for going back and forth with the staffer. And then, of course, filling out the lobby report. That helps me know what happened and it helps me follow up as well. A couple other things you can do: add the staffer to your e-news list if your organization or your club has an e-newsletter. If something comes out in the paper, or if you write an op-ed about your National Bike Summit experience, send that to them, and then consider inviting them to local events. Sometimes you'll get a member of Congress who loves to ride and you want to get them on a bike and on a ride. You can do that. You can also invite a member of Congress to say a few words at the beginning of a ride, or at a meeting or something like that. So think through what you've learned about them and what you think would be most interesting, and then invite them to participate in what you're doing at home. So thanks everyone for signing up to being a state coordinator. We really appreciate your help. If you have any questions moving forward, you can contact me regarding content, the asks, setting up or contacts, the asks, what's going to happen in the meeting, setting up your prep meeting, something like that. If you have questions about setting up the actual Hill meetings, those should go to Riley. And there's our contact information. So thanks everyone. We look forward to seeing you in March.